Our communities in the Central West have been battered and bruised, and they are in the firing line again. But all hands are on deck. All resources are available to make sure our communities get through this difficult time. Over the last 24 hours, we've had over 900 requests for assistance. There have been 222 flood rescues. There's obviously concerns for our communities in Eugowra and Forbes, particularly Forbes this morning, where evacuation orders are in place. Those evacuation orders affect thousands of businesses and properties, impacting hundreds of people. And I'd just say to the community in Forbes, we will be with you every step of the way. We were only there 2 weeks ago. They have gone through flood event after flood event after flood event. We do expect a difficult period of time over the next couple of days. Please follow those instructions. Those orders are in place to keep you and your family safe. We know there is inconvenience that is being caused. We know for many of our communities in the Central West, there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of hurt. But we've got through these challenges in the past, and we will get through these challenges again. I want to thank the Acting Prime Minister, Richard Marles. Spoke with him yesterday in relation to getting additional ADF support. We'll have more boots on the ground today, an additional 100 ADF personnel. The coordination between the federal government, the state government and local councils in those areas has been incredibly important in making sure that care and support is there. So obviously in Eugowra and Forbes, there is a continued focus at the moment on the response, on rescues, on keeping people safe. We have over 14 aircraft that have been out in the air supporting and rescuing many people in the Eugowra area, and those aircraft from the SES, the ADF, police, ambulance and surf lifesaving. So I want to thank our emergency services personnel right across the board for the work that they are doing. You're putting your lives on the line to support and care for our people in the Central West, and to that, on behalf of the people of New South Wales, can I thank you very much for the work that you are doing at this difficult time. I know many of our emergency personnel are incredibly tired after we've had these events continuing, but that support is there, and I want to thank you for that. Clean-up and recovery is now in the early stages in Molong and Canowindra, and the ADF are providing assistance there. But as I said, for all those businesses, for all those families and communities, I know there is a lot of pain and suffering right now, but we will get every one of our communities back on their feet as quickly as possible. It is a team effort right across the board from a federal level to a state level. Those emergency operations centres are in place to provide that support, that care for every single person across our state. The last point I just want to make today before I pass to the Minister is follow those instructions. We do expect, and we'll hear from the Bureau, we do expect more heavy rainfall over the weekend. It's not taking much rain to cause flash flooding anywhere across our state. It's only taking between 100 and 150 mils of rainfall overnight, and we will have flash flooding, and that can come up very, very quickly. And so when those orders are in place, even though you don't see potentially flooding around you, you need to leave because we need to make sure as we go through this period of time with our catchments are full, our rivers are full, our ground is wet. It's not taking much rainfall at all for that flooding to occur. Those instructions are in place to keep you safe. And finally, I'll just make this point again. Don't drive through floodwaters. We say this every time. We lose lives. We lose lives when people drive through floodwaters. You wouldn't drive into a bushfire. Don't drive into floodwaters. If it's flooded, forget it. You put you and your family at risk when you do that. And also, our hard-working and tireless emergency services personnel who are putting their life on the line to keep you safe. But ultimately, can I just thank everybody across our state? Can I say our thoughts are with every single person in the Central West. We will deploy every resource possible to make sure not only do we keep you safe during this period of time, but we get you back on your feet as quickly as possible. Now I'm going to pass to the Emergency Services Minister.
Thank you, Premier. Well, as indicated overnight, we've seen the river levels at Forbes increase faster than expected, and that has led to the bringing forward of the evacuation order from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. this morning. We've got around 1,000 properties that are covered by that evacuation order, hundreds of people, and we are expecting that 500 to 600 homes and businesses will experience inundation from the flooding that we are anticipating to come through Forbes. And that is because we're anticipating similar river levels there, around 10.8, 10.88 over the days ahead, which is similar to what that community experienced just 2 weeks ago. It's devastating for the Forbes community that they are experiencing this once again, and particularly in such a short period of time. Many of those residents have not been able to return to their home as yet from the flooding 2 weeks ago, and are now facing a situation where their home is likely to be inundated again. I'd like to acknowledge that this just isn't people's houses. These are people's homes. It's their belongings, it's their memories, it's their livelihoods, and it's their futures. And everyone across New South Wales today is thinking of the communities right across the Central West, where we've seen inundation in many communities, including Canowindra, Eugowra and Molong. We are deploying as many resources as we possibly can to get into those communities as quickly as that floodwater recedes, so that we can do those rapid damage assessments and get people back into their homes. We now have 70 local government areas that are the subject of a natural disaster declaration as a result of this event, which is now in its 63rd day. And so our focus at this time is really two-pronged. We are still in the emergency response in many communities, and that includes, as the Premier has mentioned, Forbes and Eugowra. And we are in the early stages of recovery in places like Molong and Canowindra. We are also turning our attention to downstream of Forbes. Once the peak passes through Forbes, we know that that lower Lachlan area has been in major flood now for 12 months. And again, our heart goes out to the communities of Condobolin, which are entirely isolated at this point. And we've got schools all along the lower Lachlan that are closed at present. We've got children who are learning from home and assisting their families on properties as is required. So I would like to say thank you finally, as I try to every day, to our thousands of volunteers and personnel who are out and about in our communities, saving lives, providing that all-important support as it is required by our communities. We will continue to work side by side with people and our communities to get them through this current event. And we know that there is more rain expected for this weekend, so our preparations will continue ahead of that weather event as well. I'll now pass to the SES Commissioner to make some remarks around preparation.
Thanks, Premier. Thanks. So the New South Wales SES are leading one of what would be the biggest operations in relation to flood response across New South Wales in its history. And I thank our emergency service partners to be able to go out and meet the community's needs and respond to their requests for assistance. Our main area of focus today is Eugowra and, as mentioned, at Forbes. So what we're seeing is a number of creeks and rivers are flowing into that Lachlan River area, flowing down into Forbes, and then expected to flood further downstream from Forbes. Yesterday we had an immense amount of requests by communities for our assistance in flood rescues in the Eugowra area, and it did rise much quicker than we had expected, as is Forbes today, rising quicker than we had expected. It was incredibly serious and significant. We saw the river heights double in size from 9 p.m. Sunday through to 8:15 a.m. on Monday morning, where it peaked at 9.75, and the emergency warning was issued at 6:14 a.m. And as a result, we received 180 requests for assistance and 159 flood rescues, many of those off roofs of houses and businesses. We've been able to pre-position resources there, but when the calls came for assistance, we moved many more resources from around the state and many more helicopters to assist in those flood rescues, and had over 140 emergency service personnel assisting that community. As mentioned, we had the 14 helicopters, and we've got 4 helicopters that are just helping us move our resources around that can't get down the roads because of the flooded waters across those roads. So today, not only are we helping respond and prepare further downstream from Forbes, but we're also starting the rapid damage assessments. There's 100 additional ADF personnel coming in to assist us today on the ground, and we've had 12 personnel from New Zealand Fire and Emergency Services come and help us, which is fantastic to put them out into the community to help us respond again. And we're looking at longer term, the resourcing to make sure that we can meet those community needs. So there are a number of power outages and communication problems around Eugowra area and the broader geographical area of Eugowra. A number of people have obviously heeded our warnings and evacuated early, but because of the communication problems, sometimes you can't reach your friends and loved ones, and family are concerned. So I'd remind you of the benefit of registering at the Red Cross Register, Find, Reunite. It's really important, if you haven't gone to an evacuation centre but you have left your home, that you register on that site, Register, Find, Reunite, so that we aren't sending resources out to search for you when you're safe and well at other premises. So I'd really ask people to go and register on that site. There's evacuation orders in place for many towns, and as is stressed by the Premier, it is really important, once we give an evacuation order to evacuate now, that you do evacuate. It is for your safety, and if you don't evacuate, you are putting yourselves and your family's lives at risk. Again, also, there's many rural properties that have been severely affected by these floods, and again, particularly downstream of Forbes, we're asking those farmers to ensure their livestock are put to higher ground so that they are safe as well. So the flood risk remains high across many weeks and months to come. As said, and the Bureau will go through the weather forecast, although it's sunny out there at the moment, the waters are still flowing into these catchment areas, still filling the dams and the rivers and creating severe risk to our community in those catchment areas. So I'd ask people to be aware of the warnings that we put out, the information that we make available. If you need assistance from the New South Wales SES, please ring 132 500, and if it's life-threatening, ring 000. We will continue to help those communities where they are at risk, and it's just a matter of calling us or calling 000, and we will come to your assistance. But it will make it a lot easier and a lot safer for our volunteers and emergency service personnel if you follow our directions, so that we don't have to place our personnel in danger to go out and risk their lives to save you. Thank you, and I'll now hand to Steve Bernasconi from the Bureau of Meteorology.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mr Premier, Minister Cook and Mr Thurtell. Good morning all. The focus for the Bureau's update today will be largely on the floods in the Central West, but before I do, I'll just give an update on the current weather conditions and what's expected over the next couple of days. The good news is the rain and the thunderstorm risk that we experienced over the weekend has eased and abated. There is still a slight chance of thunderstorms around the Hunter to the mid-north coast today, but largely you'll see settled conditions across much of the state. That said, conditions are cooling off today in the southern districts, so they're going to be the first to feel a fairly significant cold snap. The rest of the state into tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll start to see temperatures drop to 8 to 10 degrees below average, which is a significant cooling of conditions for this time of year. That is likely to lead to frost for the tablelands, very unseasonable for November, and we will likely see some snow on the Alps this week. That said, it is generally settled. The next front that is lining up in the west of the state or over in the Bight is scheduled sometime around the weekend, and we'll have more information on that as it comes closer to the event. For the floods, though, the focus really is on the fact that we still have 17 flood warnings issued for the state. They're affecting, eight of those are actually in their major category, and they're the focus of today. They're affecting about 25 locations. Now, if you don't mind, I am going to refer to some of the flood warnings that came out early this morning because they're quite new and it's got the latest information. Just moving through some of these catchments, probably in order of significance right now. For the Lachlan River, or the Lachlan catchment, we do have major flooding occurring at Forbes, and we have a reach mark of about 10.8 metres possible this afternoon. Now, that reach is similar to the June 1952 flood. We also have major flooding occurring at Cowra, Nanamai, Cottons Weir and Gemelong Weir. I'll focus a little bit on this particular catchment for some details. For Cowra in particular, we have a peak of 14.3 metres and it's steady at the moment. For context, earlier in November it peaked at 13.35 metres. So we've got a metre above the early November peak for Cowra. If you're wondering how that peak arrived, well, Cowra, from a rainfall event over the weekend, had 121 millimetres, and according to our records this morning, that's the highest daily rainfall for Cowra at the Cowra Ag Station in 118 years. So a really significant rainfall event for Cowra. For the Lachlan and for the Namoy, town of Namoy, it may reach 13.6 metres this afternoon. Earlier in this November it was 13.4. And moving into Forbes, the Iron Bridge may reach around 10.8 metres this afternoon. Again, it's similar to that 1952 flood. And for context, the flood in Forbes in earlier November was 10.67. Further downstream for Cottons Weir, it may reach 7.3 metres today. The potential for further rises are possible, though, as more water is coming down. Downstream, though, of the Lachlan, I just want to point to Condobolin. Condobolin Bridge is currently at 7.35 metres. It's steady. It does have major flooding, and it's likely that it may remain around 7.4 through to Thursday. So it's a significant lag in the way it moves away from the bridge there. And in Uabalong, it may reach 7.4 metres around the 20th of November as the flood peaks move further south or further along the river, and it's slightly below the 1952 flood. Turning to the Macquarie River and specifically Bathurst, we have major flooding occurring at Bathurst. The river at Bathurst peaked at 6.64 metres around yesterday afternoon. It is currently falling, and that level is very similar to the flooding that they had in 1998 of 6.69 metres. It's currently at 4 and a bit metres, and it's falling, but it's still in the major flood category for Bathurst. Turning to the Ballubula and Mandadgery Creek, which do feed into the Lachlan. We have major flooding occurring at Canoundra and Eugowra, of course. For Canoundra, upstream, that has peaked at 7.79 metres yesterday morning, and that is the highest peak that it's had in some 70 years, according to our hydrologist this morning. So that's a significant flood for the town of Canoundra. And in Eugowra, of course, it's peaked and it is falling, but it's had significant impacts. The levels are around about the 9 metre mark. In Tamworth, moderate flooding is occurring at Tamworth. The Tamworth Road Bridge peaked at 5.3 metres yesterday or last night. It's currently falling, but it's in the moderate flood range. For the Tuman and Murrumbidgee rivers, we have major flooding that's higher than the September 1974 flood occurring at Hay. I'll point to Hay specifically, as that's the most significant one in that area. It's 9 metres and it's rising with major flooding, and it may stay that way right through to Wednesday. And just a brief touch on the Murray and the Edwards River. Major flooding higher than the 1975 flood is occurring at Wakul Junction, and possibly at Boundary Bend, Euston, Mildura and Wentworth as the floodwaters move further south. There's a lot more detail to go with that, and I'd encourage you to go to the Bureau's website and look for the warnings. It's one of the first things you'll see on the website. Look for the warnings for New South Wales. They're updated regularly, and they give you the details for each one of these catchments, the towns that are affected, the levels of the river and the timing of their movement downstream. That said, I'd also encourage you to stay on top of all of your weather risks by going to the Bureau's weather app and pressing the notifications button so you get an understanding of your weather risk wherever you are in Australia. That's all I have for you.
Questions?
Steve, could I just clarify that the statistics you had on the Lachlan River at Forbes,
Yes.
the peak you mentioned would be similar to 1952. Is that a record 1952? Has it been at levels higher than that since?
The information I have for Forbes, just bear with me while I refer to it again. Similar to their 1952 flood level. I don't actually have a number on whether that is the record or not, but I just know that is the significant flood level for them. So 10.8 is what we're looking at for Tuesday afternoon today.
Part of the drought, $650 million odd was promised to the Wyangala Dam to raise the wall by around 10 metres.
Yep.
It's since blown out, that project. The dam spilled yesterday.
Yep.
Do you regret not acting sooner on that project?
No, we've worked very hard on all those water projects right across our state, and we are committed to continuing to work with the federal government in relation to raising Wyangala Dam. In addition to that, those business cases and the work there is being finalised, and ultimately that's a long-term project. But I think what we learn from these events is that there are short-term solutions, there are short-term responses that need to be carried out, but there's also long-term thinking. And that's why, whether it's Wyangala Dam or raising the Warragamba Dam wall, these are projects that save and protect lives. And we may go through a period, as you say, Tom, 4 years ago, we were in drought. Now we're going through a period of heavy rainfall and floods. Drought will come again, and that's obviously the opportunity when you do get the opportunity to raise that wall. But floods will come again, and significant ones. And the decisions that we make today and the investments we make today will save lives well into the future.
Can you commit to getting that project completed within the next term of government if you were re-elected?
Raising Wyangala? Well, and I'll take advice on that. We're committed as a government to raising the Wyangala Dam. But obviously, you can't do that in circumstances where the catchment is full. So the work has to be completed. We'll work with the federal government in relation to funding. But ultimately, this project needs to be done. And every time I've been in Forbes, particularly, and speaking to the community members, this project needs to get off the ground. You've got a situation right now where that catchment is spilling. There's a lot of water coming out of it, and we need to make sure that when we go with it in years to come, when we're facing the same situation, that we've made the decision and made the investment to protect those communities, and that's what we're going to get. That's what we're going to do.
For those that are in Sydney, maybe who followed the Warragamba issue, is it the same situation that it's likely to be delayed for years and years and years because there is opposition? Because many people in Sydney don't know anything about that particular project.
What was that?
There's 80% support in Valley to do this project.
Yeah, I mean, I have yet to meet anyone in the Forbes community who is not supportive of raising that dam wall. And it's those communities that are affected who are on the front line when we have heavy flooding events like this. The Minister has said there's 80% support. Well, I haven't met the 20% who don't support it. I've met people who come up to me in all those communities and say this project has to be done.
So what's the hold-up?
Well, the business case, that work has been completed. These are complex engineering projects. They're not simple. They are not simple projects. So my expectation is the work gets done. I've made the same comments in relation to raising the Warragamba Dam wall. We're waiting on documents from Water New South Wales. My expectation is that's why the Minister has brought it in as critical infrastructure. Because we can't have red tape and bureaucracy get in the way of getting these projects done.
These business cases, though, so often with dams and infrastructure and the like, the cost-benefit ratio is not there. It doesn't stack up financially.
Well, Warragamba Dam does.
Well, but for others, for instance, they may not, especially regional dams. Does the government need to look past the financial viability of these and just push ahead regardless of the business case?
You can't put a BCR on human life. Simple as that. And one focus, obviously, the economic side of these decisions. But ultimately, what's more important is the protection of human life and property. And that's what I'm focused on.
There's been some aid arrived from New Zealand, but will you be seeking help from elsewhere?
Yeah, well, do you want to speak to the supporters? Yeah. I'll make one comment, Steph, on that, and then I'll pass to you. Yeah, we're having support from around the world to help us during this difficult time. And the advice I've received is that this is the first time we've received such support for floods. We've had overseas volunteers from the US, from New Zealand, from right around the world when it comes to fighting fires. this is, from my understanding, the first time we've had it for floods, and I want to thank them. A number of people from New Zealand have arrived today, and others will come as well. And I think that's a wonderful thing, that people are going out of their way, as we do as well as Australians, to help other countries when they're going through difficult times of fires and floods. But I want to thank those who are arriving today, and will do so as well over the course of this period. But Steph, you might provide some further detail.
Just very quickly, we are expecting to receive support elsewhere, including Singapore and the United States, which will help bolster our capability right through until Christmas at this point in time. So these requests have been put out there and responded to very, very quickly. And for that, we're very appreciative, because our volunteers and our personnel are tired, is understandable. And so these incoming personnel will provide flood rescue capability. They'll also provide capability of being inside our incident control centres, part of our incident management teams that provide that across the board coordinated support and response to communities, because we know that we're in our third consecutive La Nina. The BOM is predicting wetter than usual conditions right through to the end of the year. Even if it were to stop raining today, there are many, many communities, particularly in the west of New South Wales, that will require resupply for weeks and indeed months. So we have got that forward look out to about the end of February at this point in time. And so against that backdrop, we've reached out for extra support and very grateful to be receiving it.
Last questions, guys.
In Forbes, Yagara and the like, would buyback models ever be expanded to these places, similar to what's going on in the Northern Rivers? Because a lot of people might be considering not ever moving that there.
I've always said, arising out of the flood inquiry, that we will tailor our responses to individual communities. Now, what we've seen in the Northern Rivers is a situation where those freak events, in those freak events, we will likely lose lives. And we need to protect lives, we need to protect property. So that's the decision we made with the federal government, and it was the right decision for that community. There is probably not one area of our state that is not at risk of flooding. And particularly at this time, when the catchments are full, the rivers are full, the ground is wet. As I said earlier, it doesn't take much rainfall for flash flooding to occur. So we can't protect against that in every single occasion. What we can do is focus on projects in those areas that reduce flooding and reduce danger to people's lives. That's why I've said, when it comes to the Hawkesbury and Nepean, and families in Western Sydney, our approach in that area is to raise the Warragamba Dam wall. We've also said, in relation to the areas that you've asked in that question, Tom, communities like Forbes, that we believe we should be raising Wyangla Dam, and we're doing the work on that. So we will take a tailored approach to every community. You can't obviously protect against every situation. There is, as I said, there is not one area across our state that is not subject to flooding. That includes Sydney.
Premier, can I just ask for another
Yeah,
question?
let's go through some others quickly.
The vegetation bill is now being withdrawn. You were quite positive that a balance was going to be struck yesterday. What's happened overnight? Why has it been?
Well, the minister's got to get the balance right. It's a difficult issue. You've got to balance, obviously the protection of biodiversity with support for farmers and renewable farming, and that balance has to be struck. Now, concerns have been raised, and the appropriate thing has happened, and that's that the minister needs to do more work on it, and the balance has to be struck that gets it right, and that's my expectation as Premier.
Damage your environmental credentials?
I don't think so. It's a complex issue. I think everyone appreciates that. This is an issue that's gone on for some time, and the ministers, both ministers, have been working to get that balance. Now, clearly concerns have been raised. They need to be addressed.
On
Premier,
ports, yes.
Ports. Premier, the country's largest tugboat
Yeah.
operator is going to lock the gates on Friday to workers. What, I guess, is your concerns about that? And in your view, is this a continuation of the sort of industrial unrest we've seen all year?
Well, they've got to solve it. And I'd say to the MUA and to the company to fix the problem. Ports are incredibly important for communities right across New South Wales. Farmers, businesses and communities, particularly as we head into the Christmas period. So they need to sit down and fix the problem.
Will you intervene?
I don't have the power. What I can say is they should be sitting down and working through their issues. And obviously I've spoken to our minister in relation to it, but ultimately it's a matter for the union to work through those issues, with the company. But I'd make this point, from whether it's the union or the company, focus on our people, and solve the problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.